Hello there, friends. My name is Scott, and I'm here tonight with
Sarah Varnell. I'm the pastor from Trinity United Methodist Church.
And we're going to have a coffee convo. You have to say coffee convo with me.
Coffee
Convo. Let's do that again.
Okay.
Let's do that again. Hi, I'm Scott, and this is...
Sarah Varnell.
And
I'm
we're...
the pastor at Trinity.
We're off to a great start. A great start. And we're going to have a coffee convo. There we go. We are live. Jump in the comments. Let us know you're here for Coffee Convos, which is an opportunity to get to know Sarah and about her life and family and work in ministry in our neck of the woods and church world here in Greenville, and the story of God's work in her life. So thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, third time's a charm.
Right? Yeah, I think the masses are just going to overwhelm this again, so we'll see how it goes.
I received lots of notifications and texts from people today.
I know.
Finally going to have Sarah on.
Finally.
The first time it was because legit Facebook internet problems that weren't just us.
Yeah.
Apparently it was some
So you said
nationwide thing. That's what the graph said, that the tech guys in the studio claimed was the problem.
Right.
And then I was sick.
How are you feeling today?
You know, amazing.
Good.
And here we are, finally. So Sarah Varnell, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us who you are, where you're from, family history, major difficult issues from family of origin things and stuff like that.
Just dive right in.
Just put it out there for everybody.
Dive right in.
No.
So, okay.
Tell us about your family and,
All right.
and all that good stuff.
Let me think of all the... Okay, I'm ready. Yeah. All right. So my name's Sarah, and I'm married to Daniel Varnell. Daniel is the choir director at the high school, and he has Scott's son right now.
Indeed.
That's right. And
Yes.
had Sophie before that.
Indeed.
So that's kind of a connection for us here in Greenville. We're really proud to be connected to the high school.
Yeah.
And we have 3 daughters. Our oldest is Grace, and then we have Allison, and then we have Elizabeth. And we had 3 kids in 4 years. It's pretty tight,
Nice.
right? Yeah.
What are the ages again?
8, 7, and 4.
8, 7, 4.
Yeah, pretty fun.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, we're no like Chris and Angie Carlson, because they're even tighter than that. I heard they had a
not
baby.
everybody can, quite pop out 3 in almost as many years.
So anyway, I'm from Johnson City,
Yeah.
and have a lot of things in common with everyone in Greenville. Scott and I, actually, our parents are in the same Sunday school class, which
Indeed
is
they are.
pretty small worldy.
Yes, it is.
I grew up at Boones Creek Christian Church,
Uh-huh.
actually, so I've got some good Christian church roots, and went to Emory and Henry College in Emory, Virginia.
Yeah.
Got a double major in religion and poli-sci. Now that's called a Pharisee degree.
Nice.
Yeah, right.
Nice.
Nerdy, yeah. And then from there, I went to Duke Divinity School at Duke University, where I got my master's in divinity.
Yeah.
And I've been a United Methodist pastor now since 2008 officially. So a good while.
Yeah. I've been to Duke a couple times. Was thinking about it as a part of going on past MDiv grad school stuff when I was dumb enough to think I was supposed to do a PhD, which I decided against twice. No way.
It's a lot of work.
I do not have the self-discipline. You have to sell your soul to it.
Yeah.
It's lovely, though.
Sure.
It's beautiful.
So my parents are Pam and Jim. My mom's a teacher, and my dad works for the FAA at Tri-City Airport. And I'm the oldest of 5 kids.
Oldest of 5.
Oldest sister, so like a lot of like leader energy there.
Yeah, yeah. So you're the eldest of 5. And did you say what are the ages? And
So there's a pretty big age gap.
Okay.
And since I'm like getting older, I can't remember how old everyone is all the time.
You're getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
I mean, not as old as you.
I have to think of true. I have to think of my kids all the time and their ages.
Yeah.
Even. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can think of my kids pretty quickly, but like, my siblings that are right below me had birthdays this summer. And I was like, how old are they now? Because they're like in their 30s. So anyway, I'm the oldest, and I have a sister, Rachel. She's an occupational therapist in Johnson City at Quillen. She's wonderful. A lot of Greenville people come back from that, and they're
Oh,
like,
yeah?
I met your sister.
Cool.
And then my brother Austin works for Fleener. He also lives in Johnson City, and married to Katie, and she works for a veterinarian.
Cool.
And then I have a sister, Michaela, and I think she's 24. I'm pretty sure that's right.
Okay.
And Michaela's awesome. She works at a gym, but she's also a photographer, and she's just does amazing work with that. And then my baby sister is Haley, and she just turned 20, so we don't have any teenagers left. And Haley's in school learning about being a pharmacy tech assistant, so she's in the midst of that. She's pretty cool herself. So
was that 4 girls, 1 boy?
4 girls, 1 boy.
Nice.
Boy
that is
right
a
in the
pretty
middle.
large age range there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Wow. So how did you and Daniel meet?
Oh.
Oh.
So I'm a little bit of a sap when it comes to my husband. I'm not going to lie. He's pretty great.
Sap it up for the people.
Okay, I'll sap it up for the people. So
It'll help elicit some good questions. By the way, y'all, jump in and give us some good questions.
We met back in 2007.
Okay.
Now, okay, so a little bit nerd mode, but he grew up in southeast Tennessee, the Chattanooga, and then Oak Ridge was like where he went to high school. And then I grew up in northeast Tennessee, went to Science Hill High School.
Yep.
And he and I were both in chorus in high school, and we sang at some of the same events, like honors choir and all East and things.
Yes.
And so we also went to some of the same youth events, like TCTC back in the day, and so there
you
were
had
many
seen each
places,
other.
where we like could have crossed paths but never did, like that we know of.
So you didn't recognize each other necessarily from those?
No, we never met.
Okay, gotcha.
But we when you're a kid, at least I thought this way. I don't know, maybe you didn't think like this, but I would go to events like that, and I would think, I wonder if I'll meet someone that like will be important in my life. So anyway, kind of a neat connection. But
well, I was always looking for the person I would be spending my life with.
There you go. So
yeah, absolutely.
Same. Yeah. So anyway, we met though in 2007. We were both working at Lake Junaluska, and that's not Lake Juneau, Alaska.
Right.
That's Lake Junaluska.
I have been to
North
Lake
Carolina.
Junaluska.
Have you?
Yes.
It's a lovely place.
It is.
It's a perfect place for going to study and have some time with the Lord, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But I was the worship intern there in the summer through the Duke Endowment.
Yeah.
And Daniel was a Junaluska singer and also the assistant to the director.
Cool.
So when I first got there, they were like, you've got to meet Daniel Varnell because you two have to coordinate worship together.
There you go.
Talk about like a
And we've been coordinating worship ever since. You know what I'm saying? Coordinating.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow, you made that weird. Like it was.
That's what I do, Sarah.
It was cute, and then you made it weird.
That's what I do. I go to there and I'm like, nah, too intimate and touchy-feely and warm. Let's cut that off. Let's make it awkward suddenly.
So no, lots of touchy-feely here. It was wonderful. So we just became great friends that summer, and when the summer was over, and the cute thing about Lake Junaluska, it's a retirement community.
Yeah.
And so there's the people that live there are a lot of retired clergy and church workers and missionaries and that kind of thing. And they could see that something was happening with us, and so they would see us like sitting talking on the deck of the some of the hotels there and different things. Yeah, and they could see it. And so whenever they'd see us talking, they'd kind of like, oh, watch. And I remember the last day of the summer, like I went to go find him because I didn't want to just leave because we hadn't dated, or it was against the rules. I wasn't going to break that rule. So that was against the rules. Plus, here's a side note. I was always looking for like a hippie guitar playing kind of guy. And Daniel Varnell is like more of the like...
Doesn't strike me as hippie guitar player, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Tall, handsome, bald, wonderful. But like not my type up to that point, but he is my type. And so anyway, I just remember like struggling with like, what's up with this? Like, why do I have butterflies when I'm around this man?
Yeah, why do I like somebody who's not my hippie guitar player
in my
image?
Yes, not in my zone. And so I went and found him and said, I hope you'll call me. And he's like, I will. And like all the little people are watching us in the cafeteria.
Nice.
Like it's silent around us, and I just like left awkwardly because that's my gig. And that night he called me, and he kept calling me.
And you've been coordinating worship ever since.
Coordinating worship ever since.
That's right.
Best wedding ever. So, yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so we got married in 2010.
Cool.
Been married 11 years.
Good stuff. So, Sarah Varnell, Tell us about you, personality-wise. What do you like? You've already claimed awkward for yourself, as have I. Are you early, late, breakfast, dinner, early riser, late partier? Don't touch me until I've had my coffee, or let's get going early. What?
I mean, what I want to tell you is what I think you want to hear, but it's not really true.
Then I don't want that.
I would love to be an early riser,
but you're not.
No, I'm sort of a like roll out and like put on the easiest thing kind of person, like in the morning.
You have to ease into the day?
Well, no, not anymore. Used to, like, for sure. Before I had kids, my husband and I would talk about how you don't talk to me before about 9 a.m. But kids.
Oh, but kids.
Yeah.
Changes
so
everything.
Like I wake up like pretty good to go, like for the day and everything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm with it. I'm kind of in the zone.
Because others are depending on you.
Exactly.
Etc. But that's not naturally who you are.
No.
Gotcha.
No, I'd rather like take it slow in the morning.
Why is that, you think? Not that you have to have an explanation.
I'm not really sure.
I just always wonder about some of these kinds of things about people.
I feel like my brain works best like in the evening. Like that's my golden hours is like after everybody goes to bed. Like that's my most productive thinking time.
Do you do work after hours like that?
Oh yeah.
Productively?
Oh yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. I used to a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I think that was a function of
like 10 years ago.
I think more like 25 to 30.
Okay.
20 to 25, yeah, ish. But that was just out of necessity.
Yeah.
Now that I can't, well, yeah, it's the opposite for me now. Mm-hmm. But that's just more.
But like because of kids and like everybody has to get to school.
Yeah.
You know, usually I drop off my. I usually do the morning routine because Daniel, on the other end, is like definitely a morning thinker. So he gets up in the morning. He's very disciplined about that, about going and getting ready for the day.
Yeah.
And so I'm usually the one to get kids to school.
Yeah.
But then I drop like the last kid off at 7:45. So I just go on and start working at that point. So I've kind of become a morning person, but it was not natural to me.
So are you introverted, extroverted? You talked about being the firstborn of 5. Mm-hmm. Tell us about
I think
you and how you work in life and ministry and people and all that.
I think most people would probably say they think I'm extroverted. I think I grew up extroverted. I think I sought out that like social connection and everything.
Yeah.
But the older I get, the more introverted I feel like I actually am. So even though like my husband tends to be a little quieter in a crowd, he like gains so much energy from that. Whereas I feel depleted by it.
Yeah.
And so I need the time kind of to myself. So if I were to take some sort of test, I'd probably be like right in the middle, and it would depend on what happened to me that day. Like if I had anyone around me, then I probably like if no one was around me all day, then I'd probably like be a little bit extrovert because I'd miss that interaction.
Yeah.
But if I'd been with people all day, I'd definitely be in the introvert category.
So if you've got work to do, where do you go do your work? Like if you know I've got a whole bunch, I got a number of hours of work to do on a project or something, 3 or 4 hours on something.
That's a good question.
Where do you go to do that? Where do you want to go to do that stuff?
Sometimes I want to go to my office and shut the door.
Because?
And do it there. Because there's, like, my office is upstairs, so there's people.
So sort of removed from.
Yeah, a little bit. There's like a step between me.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, like, I'll go somewhere like a coffee shop type setting, or somewhere that there are people around me, but that I don't interact with. You know.
Right.
And I guess just like as a parent with little kids, I often have to work in the midst of that, and so you kind of have to learn to create sort of a bubble for yourself in that. I mean, you can shut the door, but like they open it. So.
Sure. Yeah. I'm in the bathroom. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I found, and I asked that question because I find that when I'm like, oh, I've got a whole bunch of work to do in 3 or 4 hours, for some reason I always gravitate to where people are, as if that's going to help me do the work, which I've learned it doesn't always, of course, and it can do the opposite. But my natural tendency is, all right, people are around, let's do this, as if that's somehow a part of. I found myself doing that for years early on in ministry. I'm like, why do I do that?
I'm kind of a 2-track mind person, so like I can't work well in just like total silence. Like there has to be music going on, or there has to be like
for sure.
movement around me, but it can't be movement that depends on me. It has to be like movement in a coffee shop, you know, like people all around, and I can totally tune that out. But if it's just quiet, it's like the inside distractions pop up, and I can't focus in on the task. So it's like,
I understand some of that.
My
way of dealing with that is a bit the opposite. Yeah,
because I
have to be
preaching.
Working and moving to get the stuff done.
I even do that when I'm preaching sometimes. Like I'll be preaching, but like I'm having an inside conversation with myself as I'm going. It's like this 2-track mind.
Wow. Like, I am not that way at all. I'm one track, and that's all there is.
Yeah.
So we've got a few questions. We will get to them in a moment.
Okay.
But I want to do the random question thing. No. That was not on the list that I sent you.
We didn't talk about like Enneagram or anything like that.
We didn't. You're right. Okay. What are you on the Enneagram?
I want to talk about it.
Okay, sounds good.
What are you?
I'm a 1-wing 2.
Of course.
Of course.
I'm a 3-wing 2.
What does that mean?
3's an achiever.
Achiever. Okay. Yeah. 1 is like a perfectionist.
It's not it is a perfectionist.
True story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know that much about Enneagram.
How are the questions random if you're going to look at them first?
Like, they're random because I'm doing this right here.
Are you going to flip it over?
Because you don't know what they are, and I'm going like this.
Hand pick a question.
Well, I could. What is the best thing about flying?
Oh.
That's what it says. Your dad, FAA. You have some.
He's not like a pilot though. He's a radar tech. Yeah.
Still
I would
cool.
say my favorite thing about flying is looking out the window. I love that.
That is an amazing experience.
I love that. I love
Where else do you do that?
Like
Nowhere.
as you go into the clouds, and I love being on top and like looking down and seeing what's below. And I love the descent where you can kind of start to make out shapes beneath, and I think that's so neat. I love that.
It's super neat. You're right.
I don't love like the takeoff or like the landing because that's kind of.
Does that stress you out?
A little. What
Really?
about you?
Yes and no. I'm like, if this is going to be it, this is going to be it, y'all. But then I put myself into like, isn't it amazing that this many thousands of pounds thing can do this? Yeah. So I put myself in this like, isn't this amazing mode of thinking and experiencing it?
It's like a suspension of reality. Like, I'm going to bust in the sky. It's fine. I'm fine.
It's fine. I'm fine. I'll be okay. It's all right.
Flying,
Yes.
Yeah.
What family tradition would you most want to pass along?
Family tradition. I come from like a family of tradition. Like my family loves traditions.
Okay.
So we have lots of things.
Yeah.
But the first one that always pops in mind for me is Thanksgiving. Because we always, growing up, would gather at my grandmother's house, at least at some point, with cousins and extended family.
Yeah.
And the coolest part about my Mama Sue, she turned 90 yesterday.
Wow.
I know, right?
Happy birthday, Mama Sue.
Yes, Mama Sue. She's probably watching. Yeah, she's the best. But anyway, she turned 90 yesterday,
Cool.
and she would always cook this amazing food, but also she didn't just invite our family. She always invited people that were on the outside edge of things, and people that she adopted as her own family.
Cool.
So, like, when I was in college, I could call and say, can I bring 2 friends? And she's like, yeah, bring them.
I got plenty of food.
Everybody's welcome.
That's right.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
It was just a neat tradition that it kept things, and like my cousins lived far away, so that was usually the one time of year we would see them. Yeah. And so it was just always this great time of catching up and good food and driving Mama crazy.
Yeah. My dad would always go around and find students on campus wherever we happened to be. He was usually teaching and bring them along for things like that.
Yeah.
I had similar experience with that. What? This is good.
How much time do we have left? A lot. We have a lot of time.
We do have a lot of time. What is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear?
That's serious.
That is serious. Like, I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind, like, there's actually 2 things.
Bring it on.
One is something happening to one of my children.
Yeah.
Like, that's just always a fear. Like, from the moment you find out that you're going to have a baby, like, that's your fear. It's like
before the baby comes out, you are in that.
And then the other one that's just, like, consistent in my life is spiders. I hate them. I feel like they have an advantage.
of more legs.
Well, yeah, but also like they're usually above me in some way, and they have the webs.
Above you. What does that mean, above you?
Like, yeah, I'm just not.
So you feel in the vulnerable position because they're up there somehow.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, that's deep.
The other kind of weird fear
we could
that
unpack
I have,
that.
We're just
Keep
gonna
going. Keep going. What other fears?
I don't like. This is a really strange one. I don't like being in water that I can't see the bottom of.
Preach.
Like, I love a pool. I love to swim. I'm a huge swim person.
No, I don't even like the
like,
deep end of the pool.
The ocean, I don't like to go any deeper than I can see my feet.
True story.
Like, lake, nope. Goodbye.
True story. No.
People jumping off ledges to get in lakes.
Never. I like watching the video and other people.
I don't want a carp to touch me. You know what I mean? Like catfish and carp. Those things
Leviathan live down there.
And especially around here, there's like buildings under the water because of I know they've like fallen down.
There is. In your hometown-ish.
But it's like in my head that's like there are buildings underneath, even though I know they're not there anymore.
They're supposedly not there anymore, yes.
Yeah. So I don't like the idea of things underneath me.
No, we for sure share the water thing.
Yeah?
So it started for me. I will try to make these long stories short.
Yeah, please.
But basically it started as a kid when...
I can interview you.
Well, we could do a moment of it. One of my biggest fears is water because a friend's older brother, much larger, much older, could physically totally control me, thought it was hilarious to keep me in the deep end and basically, take me within inches of death and then bring me up. So that's where it started. And then I'm, fine for years. But then as an adult, there was this place where the continental shelf was strangely close, which occasionally happens. And so I thought, I'm going to go way out there. So I do, and I suddenly feel my feet slip, and I'm like, whoa. And so I look, and my eyes are open, and it's nothing but just blackness. Nothing but blackness. And it's the worst moment I've had in my whole life.
Was a shark coming at you?
Nothing was. There was nothing there.
But there could have been one.
There was nothing but blackness.
But there could have been a shark.
But that's where sharks live.
Right.
So I, quickly...
Leviathan. Yeah.
Leviathan lived down there.
Yeah.
So, we definitely share that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
for me, it was because all the people, neighbors, and people in my church would tell the stories of the TVA. And one day I was like, what? There's towns underneath the lake, Boone
Which
Lake.
is crazy, right?
Yeah, but and then my grandfather was like, well, they've fallen down. But I just couldn't get past that whole...
No, they're still up. Underneath the water.
Yeah.
So, a couple questions.
We're done with the random cards?
No, we're talking about people who say,
oh, hi, people.
Hey, Varnells, we love you all. Thank you for your service to GHS in Greenville.
Oh, yay.
Tell us about what people might not know. Ooh, this is good and serious.
Maybe skip it.
Nah, let's do it. This will be a nice entree into ministry leadership and the fun of all that, the joys and sorrows. Tell us about what people might not know about the challenges of ministry and how you could best be encouraged by us. And then also maybe a funny Mr. Varnell story.
Oh. No. He's precious. No.
Come on.
He's the best. I won't do that.
Okay. Tell us about what people might not know about the challenges of ministry and how you could best be encouraged by us, by others.
I think that's a really good question. I think the challenges of ministry, so much of what ministry is not something that everyone sees.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I get to the end of the day sometimes, I'll look back on my day and I think about the variety of things that I have done in that day. Like a day can go between greeting a baby that's just been born, and then being at the bedside of someone who is dying, and working on a sermon for a little bit for a couple weeks down, and having an idea for some ministry that you need to make a note about, and getting a call about a bulb being broken. I mean, there's it's so many different things that it can be. And so I think a bunch of different hats to wear and roles to play. And so I think that I appreciate the fact that so often people will recognize that a little bit and give space for you probably have some things in your mind, Pastor Sarah, that I don't even know about. Right. I'm like, well, thank you for giving me space for that. So I would say that's something that's helpful with people in ministry, is recognizing that. And just the fact that sometimes it can get a little bit lonely, which sounds wild. It sounds because crazy. You're around people all the time.
Right, yes.
But I think because you are in ministry carrying things that aren't always appropriate to talk about with every person that you interact with,
right,
it can sometimes feel a little bit, But like Trinity, they're really supportive of their pastor. Like they're a church that loves their pastor very well. And they do a great job of recognizing, like they'll say, like people in that church will say things to me like, Pastor Sarah, you need to take some time off.
Yeah.
They really, I appreciate that. And
Absolutely.
So I think that's something that can help.
Yeah, that's good.
So that wasn't really like a super insightful thing, but.
No, it absolutely was. And part of the second thing you said about the ironic sort of isolation of some of that, because that ties to the first thing you said, which is you're in this situation with that person. There's another circumstance. And the circumstances of all those things are entirely different. And you can't necessarily talk about one with the other because it's not helpful. And sometimes it's things you have to keep confidential.
Right.
And it can even be things that you don't have to keep confidential that you could say, but it's not the best thing. And so there is that sort of having to always weigh what you do and don't say to people. I experienced even that with staff. Hey, I think you should think about this in this area because this other thing's going on. And so we need to work together in this way. I'd love to tell you more about why. I can tell you these things, but I can't tell you everything. Right. So you just kind of have to trust some of that.
Yeah.
That becomes difficult, isolating in its own way.
Yeah.
No, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Well, it was my wife, so,
Well, she's a smart lady.
Beth Deck says, hello.
Hi, Beth.
Hi there, Beth. Thanks for jumping on. So, do you have any go-to scriptures that you have stored up in your heart for when you need them?
Oh, gosh. That's also a great question. I feel like when it comes to, you guys, who's asking this question?
FCCers jumping on, just being like, come on.
Being sharp people here, yeah. I think for different situations, different scriptures kind of pop up for me.
Sure.
I would say the overall tenor, though, is that promise that God is with us. And so that feeling of knowing that God is in the midst of a situation, in the midst of a circumstance. And there's some great ones from Paul in particular, encouraging that. But also just moments in the Gospels where Jesus lives into that in a powerful way. So I don't know that I want to name anything in particular, just that there are so many scriptures that I find are written on my heart, and that come in a moment when you need them. And I remember as a kid, like I used to kind of flip open my Bible and be like, what do you have for me?
Supernaturally, Holy Spirit, direct me to...
Yes. But after years of reading the Bible and preaching the scriptures, I think it's more, and maybe you would say this too, it's almost like it's part of my language sometimes. Like it just kind of like pops up and isn't something I find encouraging. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have tried to actually sort of cultivate for a long time. Because I came from, there's some years in my life where I'm like, I am so sick of people having to always quote a scripture and speak like some religious zealot, legalist, freakazoid, I'm better than you person. So I had this like strong reaction early on in ministry against some of that. So I was trying to cultivate for years a sort of, this is scripture-like language where I might say a word or two from this passage or a phrase without and just sort of weave it in and out all the time.
Yeah. I would say that's, kind of like what you're saying, that's not really my style because it feels canned, when
sure, it can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be canned.
It can be canned, yes.
I was thinking today, similarly, I was asked a question about, I was almost that same exact question, about because I've struggled with depression twice. I've been to clinical burnout / depression in my 25 years of ministry. And so I was asked, were there any scriptures or passages in the Bible that were especially helpful for me. And I remember a moment, Psalm 121, I lift my eyes up to the hills. From where does my help come? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I was at a graveside service here in Greene County, and it was someone from church who was a veteran FCCer who was a saint for the vast majority of their lives. And so we're all sitting there, and there's the background of the mountains. And so I was reading that, and we were all sort of feeling that moment. For me, that has been a real helpful passage. Like, my help comes from the Lord who made all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm going to be just fine if he made those mountains.
That passage comes up a lot here because you just drive down Andrew Johnson and like there are these glorious mountains. Absolutely.
Yeah, indeed. Another good question here. What was the best advice you received regarding entering the ministry, and what was the worst?
Hey, that's a great question too.
Thank you, Jason McCoy.
All right. Thank
Best
you,
advice regarding entering, and the worst.
Okay. I would say some of the worst advice that I got, and people say this a lot, and, you know, I'm reluctant to say it because people say this so often.
Take them on. Bring
But
it.
they'll say, if you can do anything else, don't do this.
I actually say that all the time.
Why? Why do you give that advice?
Because there's a real sense in which it is going to involve consistent, long-term, super difficult spiritual warfare and sacrifice in ways that you can't know until you get into it.
Sure.
You can't possibly know it.
Sure.
And so you think you're counting the cost effectively beforehand, but you can't, and there's no way to. Right. So you have to know you're called to it.
Right.
So that you won't quit.
I think that's a better way to say it. I think it's better to say, like, be sure of your calling.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
Really search your heart. And because I feel like when you say it the other way, this is a gift. Being in ministry is a gift
sure.
and a privilege and an honor and something that that you and I have talked about privately before. You can only do if you're called to, because
right.
it's something that God sustained you for. There's some of the things that I have been a part of or seen or anything. I'm just like, how in the world am I still standing sometimes? And it's because of the grace of God. So I see it as it's such a gift. And so I would say it more the other, like not the back-ended way, but like the front way of be sure if you're calling, like really.
Well, I'm a
heart.
negative jerk, so that's fine. It's cool.
So
it's cool.
No, you're not.
So you just snorted.
I did.
That's awesome. So best advice, worst advice.
Yeah. So
we've already covered the worst. Clearly,
that was the worst
from me. Thanks.
Scott gives
You're
it
good.
often, apparently. Yeah. Gold star.
Yeah.
You'll say it differently next
Winning.
time, right?
Not likely.
Okay.
Okay, I might. I once heard somebody tell me I probably shouldn't say it this way, but this is what I'm going to say. Now I'll say it the positive way.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say some of the best advice that I got in ministry, starting out, was the importance of friendships, of taking time for yourself, of recognizing that, you know, as a pastor, you will always have your work. You won't always have your children. You won't always have, you know, the opportunities that you have. And so remembering and kind of keeping in mind that you are a human being and that you are going to struggle too. And there are going to be times when you need time to rest and you need to be a part of that. So that was some advice that I got really early on from lots of pastors that were mentors for me. Yeah. And kind of gave me permission to embrace that part of the reason why God called me is because of my life experiences, my gifts, my humanity, which are all from God too, you know? So, so that permission to be a human, a person who also needs to, who isn't just preaching at people, but who is preaching alongside, who is preaching first to myself, you know?
For sure. So one way you said that is some mentors in ministry talked about you giving yourself permission, or you said something like that, for the rest parts, for the self-care parts. The rest and self-care parts are always part of an equation in our lives of margin, time, money, even, things like that. What have been the hardest things for you in ministry that you have to say no to or give up for that self-care to happen? Because you're always you're always prioritizing and making decisions. And so to say yes to giving yourself permission for that kind of rest or that kind of self-care means you have to say no to something else or let something fail.
I think I struggle with that balance for sure. Because I think I don't want to let things fail and I don't want to let something not work out. And so oftentimes I have to really rely on people who see me better than I see myself. My husband, some of my close friends, some of the leaders in my church that can say, like, this isn't yours to do. You know?
Yeah.
I remember someone saying to me recently that if the balls are dropped, if you're holding on to all these things, and if they're important, someone will pick them up. And I think that's so true.
That's good. It's
true in ministry. It's true in life. It's true in our households, you know. So, yeah, so I don't know that I could come up with something specific, but it's a constant reorienting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And a constant, like, examining my own, motivations. What's my motivation for being in the center of this ministry, or
for keeping this ball up,
or keeping this thing going? Like, what's my motivation in that? And where is this an opportunity that I'm taking from someone else who's better gifted for this piece?
Yeah.
Because my role is to oversee it. My role is to be a shepherd in that, and to not lead people up a hill, but sort of help kind of guide and steer and encourage and recognize giftedness in others.
Have you found any ways in your experience in ministry? Totally agree with you. Our job is to help ensure that the body is doing the work we're equipping the saints for the work of ministry, Ephesians 4:11-16. Sorry, I just talked about all those people who quote passages.
Yeah, just texted us there.
Totally agree. And I see that for myself too. That's what I'm trying to make happen. Sometimes church cultures push against that. What are some ways you have found that have been maybe at Trinity or other posts? What do you call it in Methodists? What do you call them? Charges or
churches? Just churches.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Jesus juked me. It's cool. It's a church, Scott.
It's a charge if it's more than one church. It could be charge, whatever. Church.
I knew there was some sort of like official Methodist term.
Lingo.
Yeah. That's what I was going for.
A church.
Okay. All right. Fine.
Ecclesia.
We'll go with that. So, what are some wonderful, helpful, pleasant ways that you've seen, as you talked about, people pick up balls or let them not be picked up, that are the body doing the work, where you are allowed to not have to keep all those balls. You know, because sometimes church cultures can push against that and say, no, you've got to. The professionalization of the ministry, right? When it's not meant to be that way.
Right, and I think part of that is though because like that's our daily job, right. and most people in our churches have other daily jobs.
That's right. They've got lives outside of
so what they're doing is above that, and yet they want to do it because of their commitment to following Jesus. You know, so finding places where people not only are naturally gifted, but like what they're passionate about, what they're interested in seeing. A lot of times the things that people will talk to me about are the things that God has put on their heart. And so I can help kind of imagine that with them.
Right.
An example that I think of from Trinity, they have a wonderful ministry that precedes me, honestly. It's called the Shepherd Ministry. And there's about 27 people in the church that each have anywhere from 5 to some of them have 10 or 12 people that they have committed to praying for and sending cards to and calling from time to time. And it is just a wonderful connection for me because like when the pandemic began and we went online, that was the first group that I reached out to was the shepherds to say, check in with people, let us know how the church can best be in ministry during this time. So, you know, I've seen them do that and I feel like my job is to encourage and equip them. And even saying this to you right now reminds me I haven't done that in a while, so I need to do that.
Hey, 27 Shepherds Ministry people. Hope you're watching. Thanks for your good work.
But, you know, and those are the kind of people that care about others.
For sure.
You know.
Oh, it's super important.
Yes, absolutely. And so they can be so helpful in that they will send me a text and say, Pastor Sarah, I don't know if you know, but so-and-so is about to have, you know, surgery. And maybe I didn't know. Sometimes I do. And I always tell people, like, assume I don't. Like, I'd rather hear it from 3 or 4 places.
That's right.
So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people assume you're like, oh, well, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I want to be praying for my church during those times and be present for people in those spaces when I can.
Yeah,
so.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we are in leadership positions in ministry. You said you started in church ministry in 2008. Is that right?
Technically, I really started,
Before
so
that.
I grew up in Boones Creek Christian Church.
Sure.
And ever since I was little, I've always loved going to church.
Yeah.
So especially when I got to like youth group age, I started doing things in church, singing in church, playing piano, volunteering to read scripture from time to time, being active in my youth group, which had Chris Carlson and Tommy Staggs in it.
Yes, which means clearly the group needed some leadership.
Really fun.
Yeah.
I remember Chris, you know, getting up with his guitar, you know, when he was like, you know, a young guy, just getting up there and owning it and just being amazed, you know, at his ability to do that. So, yeah, so I've always, like, been in leadership, I guess, in the church.
Yeah.
And then when I went to college, I was 19, this little church hired me to be their youth minister. And I had an awesome time at that church, but what were they thinking? Oh, my goodness. I think about trips I took those kids on as a 19 and 20-year-old. You know, I was allowed to drive the church van because there was a loophole. You had to be 25 to drive those things.
Right.
Or be on the staff. Oh. And I was on the staff, so I was driving.
I think church insurance companies have changed that.
Yes, they have. They have changed that. So
I don't think that loophole's in there anymore.
I've been like working in a church since I was 19.
Yeah. I've had the same difficulty of when do I start that? Okay, so officially, formally, full-time, paid local is this date, but really.
But I was commissioned, in the Methodist Church we call it, I was commissioned as an elder in 2008 when I graduated.
Right,
and then I was ordained in 2010, just 2 weeks after my husband and I got married. So
you've been a leader in ministry for a good long while now, obviously, going back to before 2008. Mm-hmm. In your experience, what are some qualities that make for good leadership that you have seen in others, in yourself, people have named in you?
That's a hard question for me to answer.
Because?
I don't know. I can say what qualities I see in other people that make them strong leaders, for sure.
Let's start there.
You know, I think people who are willing to lead. I think people who are willing to, and I don't mean just because they're like, let's hike up the mountain and everyone follow me.
Right.
Not those kind of leaders. Leaders that help cultivate consensus and help people vision together and see the possibility so that everybody moves in that direction at the same time.
More collaborate.
Absolutely. And I can see that in other people, and I try to cultivate that in myself. I try to be that kind of leader that sometimes even will help lead through what would be a hard decision sometimes. And that's not always the popular thing to do, but it's sometimes the thing that the gospel calls us to live into. So I would say that. I would say another thing I see is people that are willing to be authentic and genuine about who they are and what their struggles are and how they experience God. And so, that's another quality that I try to embody in my own ministry and in my own life.
Yeah. I think that's so important in church ministry leadership, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say another quality of a church leader, of an effective church leader, is someone with like a healthy sense of humility. I don't mean like fake humility.
Right.
That happens a lot in church leadership. I mean someone that really understands and sees the fruit of what they're doing being because of what God has done.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be anybody doing this. I just happen to be the one. These are the things that God's making happen in these people around us.
I don't know that it can always be anybody doing something. I think a certain person has a certain giftedness to help bring something into fruition.
Right.
But I think having that sense that this is something we do in partnership with God, and we're doing it because God has shown up to do it. That if it's big enough for me to do on my own, why invite God into that? You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. So, for you in ministry, what have been some formative influences? Who have been some formative influences? Books, etc. for you, significant in teaching you about ministry leadership and your walk with God, whether that's mentors in personal ways or others, whatever.
Well, I mean, I would say for any of us, it begins with our family of origin a lot, either as positive influences or negative. So in my case, my parents are very positive influences on me. I had grandparents who were leaders and involved in their churches as well.
Yeah.
And so that was a positive influence for me of coming from a family of people that had been involved in church in one way or another, and not just in a consumer way, but people who were singing in choirs and participating in big ways.
You saw it. They modeled it.
I saw them model that.
Right,
so I think it started there, and then when I went to college, I had some wonderful professors. One in particular I think of is a man named Dr. Reif, and he has recently retired. And he was also ordained in the Methodist Church and then serving as a professor at Emory and Henry.
Yeah.
And what I loved about him was how he made things accessible to me. He never talked down to us. He always
that's good.
tried to, and it wasn't because he was extremely intelligent, is extremely intelligent, but had a way of not making us feel like we couldn't keep up with him, but that he wanted to hear from us and have conversation. So he was someone that was very formative for me. And then good. My professors at Duke, several of them, I think of Dr. Smith, who taught church history. And it was kind of the first time, and patristics is the big topic that he teaches. St. Augustine is his kind of bread and butter, for lack of a better term. But he was so intentional about explaining how ministry was something that we were all called to do and be. I remember the last class, he told this story about, it was either his dad or himself, I'm not sure which one, but they were preaching in this church that they were serving. They were young, in their 20s, and this more seasoned person came up to them at the end and said, "You did a great job up there, but you're just so young. I'm just not sure that I can learn anything from you."
Wow.
And Dr. Smith said that he or his father, whomever it was, stood a little taller and said, "With all due respect, when I'm in the pulpit, I'm 2,000 years old." And I just thought, what an awesome perspective about, the church being this. It's not dependent upon me.
Right.
It's existed for 2,000 years.
Yes, the Word is still doing the work. Thank you.
Yes, we're a part of that work. We're a continuation of the book of Acts, you know. And then early on in ministry, the first pastor that I worked with Andy Ferguson, and he's retired now as well. But he was the senior pastor at Church Street, and I was there in Knoxville, right at the Henley Street Bridge, and I was an associate pastor, and I learned so much from him about being a good head of staff, about being someone who was patient and listened for people and their gifts. He used to drive me crazy with his patience, because I'd be like, why don't you just say something, But he had a knack for knowing when that moment was, when it was the right moment to actually speak. So those are just some examples of people I think of. But
it's great. It's gold.
Yeah, so many people and so many peer mentors. I have awesome friends that have taught me a ton about ministry and that still pours into me regularly, and I'm grateful for that as well.
Good stuff. Gold. This is good. The one thing that's easy to see about you is that you have a huge heart for the community.
Thank you.
Super awesome. Tell us what drives your heart for the community and how it's connected to your love for Jesus.
Thank you. I would say from my perspective, I think that God intends for us to be in community in powerful ways. And what I mean by that is to love people at however they come, whatever form that looks like.
Right.
And so I think the church is uniquely gifted for that work. And the thing that I love specifically about Greenville is that this is just a great town. This is a town of people that are very friendly. From the moment that we got here, people were so accepting of us and encouraging of us and our children. And I love how focused in that this community can get on its children and on raising children up and making sure they have the things that they need. I think that's why, I don't know, I just think that's why Greenville as a school system, the city schools and the county schools as well have been as successful as they've been because people step up to those things. So I would say that my heart for the community comes from my love of Jesus, because I think Jesus loved the community. I think Jesus found himself in relationship with people that others maybe didn't expect him to be in relationship with, and I try to pray for those opportunities.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, you mentioned when you all came to Trinity, Greenville, and you already had local ties and all that, of course, but so you were aware of some of that, but they welcomed you, and then you talked about care for children, and of course you also alluded to vulnerable folks, people who may be on the fringes. You sort of implied that later on. People from the community here who say those kinds of things and are welcoming and care about kids or people on the fringes, they do that because they want their community to be strong.
Right.
It doesn't come out of nowhere.
Right.
They do that because they know it's helpful for this church community, for this larger community, for you to be loved and welcomed into this place. And so that comes from them wanting to see this place be successful. We have found that to be the case as well. Yeah, that's super cool.
And sometimes when you come to a new community, people are a little afraid of outsiders.
Oh, for sure.
And yet my experience of Greenville was that they were excited for us and for the energy that we brought and for the ideas that we brought. But we were also just as excited about being a part of that, about being a part of the momentum that was in that. And I feel like truly, us coming to Greenville was God just swinging this door wide open because, both Daniel and I feel very called to the work that we do. And to find that in the same community where we can serve the people that he serves at work and I serve at work is just such a gift. Yeah,
good stuff. It's gold. Thank you for coming on to Coffee Convos.
You're welcome.
And thank you for the great questions, y'all.
And
very
you
helpful.
Didn't say anything about my own mug.
Well, you talked early on about the awkward thing, and I didn't want to make it more awkward by pointing out that your nerdy little Yoda mug was what you brought instead of, I don't know, something that has an FCC logo on it.
This is cool. I should have put a Trinity sticker on it. That's what I should have done.
Bring it on. That would be okay.
Made it really cool, right? Yeah. Yeah, this is cool. This is Grogu, Baby Yoda. I like Baby Yoda better.
Baby. I couldn't even think of... I said little Yoda.
You're not cool.
I'm not. I am... Wait, I'm way cooler than that.
Actually, I drive a van.
We drive the same van.
And I call it the Vandalorian.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
Right? Brilliant. Yeah, so, Baby Yoda. I think that's a much cooler name than Grogu. That was not... I was, so excited to hear what his name was going to be, and then they were like, Grogu. And I was like, really? Really, Grogu? Grogu?
I don't hardly even remotely know what you're talking about.
Is this the nerdy part of the conversation? Is that what we're getting?
Clearly, because I have not seen one episode of The Mandalorian.
Really?
Really. Yeah.
Scott.
Really.
Scott.
I do one thing in life, and that's it.
Well, they're pretty...
And soccer, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such that you can watch an episode, and that's good. No. And I mean... There's some really
but I heard it was amazing.
It is. The ending in particular was pretty surprising.
I heard the ending.
We stood up. We were so excited about what happened.
Are you serious?
I'm not going to ruin it. As soon as we are not live anymore, I'll tell you.
That does make me want to watch it a little bit.
Good.
Maybe just the last episode. I'm not gonna ruin Would that make enough sense? Would the last episode by itself be not helpful with all the... I'm not sure I want to put in all the time.
Yeah. Well... You should rethink that.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for asking good questions.
Thank you.
And we're out. Cue the music.